In the richest league on earth, some clubs are about to start the season with blank shirts. That sounds ridiculous. This is the Premier League, the Money League, the Endless Growth League, the league that sells itself like nothing can ever go broke. And yet here we are, 9 clubs still without front-of-shirt sponsors, 12 without signed contracts, one executive saying the hit could reach £80 million. Why? Because the Premier League finally did something that sounded moral. It pushed gambling logos off the front of shirts. And now, the bill is here. If you think this is a boring sponsorship story, you are missing the point. This is not really about branding. It is about dependency. It is about class. It is about what football built underneath the clean, glossy surface. By the end of this video, you will understand why blank shirts are not the real shock. The real shock is how many Premier League clubs were more dependent on gambling money than they ever wanted to admit. The front of a football shirt is prime real estate. It is on every broadcast, every photo, every highlight, every replica shirt, every kid in the playground. That is why gambling companies wanted it. Not because they loved football culture, because football gave them a perfect mix of visibility, tribal loyalty, and constant emotional exposure. And for clubs outside the Big Six, those deals were not just useful, they were extremely hard to replace. For years, betting companies, especially those serving Asian markets, often paid more than most alternatives. That made them less like one sponsor category among many, and more like a commercial shortcut. If you were a mid-table or lower-table club trying to close the gap to the elite, gambling cash was one of the easiest ways to do it. It helped cover the cost of trying to survive in the most inflated domestic league in the world. That is the first thing to understand. Football did not just tolerate gambling money, it got used to it. Then it quietly built around it. Back in 2023, the Premier League announced that clubs had collectively agreed to remove gambling companies from the front of matchday shirts from the start of the 2026-2027 season. On paper, it looked like a real shift. At last, a line. At last, an admission that the most visible spot on a football shirt maybe should not belong to a betting brand. And to be fair, campaigners had every right to call that progress, because football had spent years normalizing a relationship that looked uglier the longer you stared at it. Children wore these shirts. Young fans saw those logos as part of the sport's visual language. Clubs kept selling community, identity, and family while taking some of their most visible money from online casinos and bookmakers. So yes, the decision mattered. But even then, the compromise was obvious. The logos could move to sleeves. Pitchside ads could stay. The transition period was long. Clubs could still sign deals before the deadline hit. So this was never a clean moral break. It was football trying to look cleaner without fully breaking the habit. This is where the story gets much sharper. Because once the reform stopped being theoretical and started becoming real, the market told the truth. The truth is that gambling companies were paying a premium, a serious premium. And once that premium disappeared, a lot of clubs suddenly looked much less commercially attractive than they had convinced themselves they were. That is why the numbers land so hard. As the new season approaches, 9 Premier League clubs are still without front-of-shirt sponsors. 12 have not signed contracts. Outside the Big Six, some sponsorship offers have reportedly dropped by around 50%. And according to one senior executive, the collective loss could reach £80 million. That is not a minor commercial adjustment. That is a shock. And you can already see the scramble. Bournemouth have moved an existing partner into the shirt slot on reduced terms. Brentford are close to doing something similar. Everton and West Ham can push gambling brands onto the sleeves because sleeves are still allowed. Chelsea, somehow, have almost made a tradition of beginning seasons without a shirt sponsor and patching the problem later. Other clubs are still looking for replacements that do not really replace what they lost. The league did not just remove an ugly extra. It pulled out one of the supports holding up the commercial middle class. This is where the story becomes bigger than sponsorship. Because the real subject here is hierarchy. Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester City, and Manchester United are sitting on giant long-term deals worth tens of millions every year. Tottenham are insulated too. These clubs are not thrilled by market turbulence, but they are not being structurally exposed by it. The pain lands lower down, on the clubs who are rich by normal standards but poor by Premier League standards. On the clubs who needed every extra edge just to keep pretending the gap to the elite was bridgeable. On the clubs who sold visibility wherever they could get it. And that is why this story is so good, because the reform sounds moral, But the cost falls hardest on the clubs with the least leverage. The Premier League gets to look cleaner. The weaker clubs get the smaller deals. Football wanted to wash the shirt. It sent the bill downstairs. And there is another reason this story works. Because the gambling money is not really gone. It is just being rearranged. Sleeves are still open. Pitch side boards are still open. The EFL still has Sky Bet in the title sponsorship of its divisions. Across English football, the relationship is still there, still visible, and still profitable. So what exactly changed? The most obvious logo placement. That matters, but it is not the same as breaking the dependency. It is aesthetic cleanup more than structural separation. And once you see that, the whole story becomes more revealing. Football did not defeat its gambling addiction. It just tried to make the addiction look a little less obvious on camera. Now, to be fair, there is a reason clubs kept signing these deals. Football is now so expensive, so inflated, and so unequal. The clubs are constantly hunting for revenue wherever they can find it. Wages rise, transfer fees rise, competitive pressure rises, fans demand ambition, owners talk about sustainability while still expecting survival, growth, and better squads. In that world, a sponsor who pays significantly more than the alternatives becomes very hard to refuse, especially if your rivals are taking the same money, especially if the league itself has spent years making that relationship feel normal. That does not make the arrangement noble, but it does explain how so many clubs walked into dependency without ever saying the word out loud. The Premier League did not just create a space where gambling money was available. It created an environment where refusing it could feel like competitive self-harm. The reason I think this story matters is that it reveals something uncomfortable but true about the modern game. The Premier League loves to present itself as football's finished product, the most polished league, the most glamorous league, the most marketable league, the place where the money never stops. But every now and then, a small crack reveals the wiring behind the walls. And this is one of those moments. Because if the richest league in the world cannot remove one morally embarrassing revenue stream without causing panic in its middle ranks, then the problem is bigger than gambling. It is about what kind of economy football created. One where the biggest clubs can afford principles, and everyone else has to price them. That is the real takeaway. The ugliest part of this story is not the old betting logo. It is the fact that once the logo had to go, the league discovered how much of its own structure depended on the cash behind it. So what is the real story here? Not that shirt sponsors are changing, not that one category of advertising is shrinking, not even that clubs might lose money. The real story is that football spent years taking ugly money because the system rewarded it. Then, the moment it tried to look cleaner, it discovered that the ugliest part was not the logo, it was the dependency. And that leaves the Premier League facing a brutal question. If cleaning up the shirt front makes the weaker clubs poorer, while the strongest clubs barely blink, has football actually become healthier? Or has it just revealed, again, that even its reforms are shaped around protecting the top and squeezing everyone below? Because in the end, blank shirts are not the strangest part of this story. They are just the most honest image it has produced.